Thank you for your interest or participation in the RAB QSA International Examination process. The input from subject matter experts like yourself is critical in ensuring that tests are developed to be fair, reliable, and valid. This short presentation will provide you with an overview of the various phases to exam development for RAB QSA examinations. RAB QSA follows standard psychometric processes when developing examinations. There are several phases for developing examinations used by RAB QSA to measure the professional skills and knowledge base of applicants. The entire process and each phase within it follow the requirements of the ISO IX 17024 standard. The standard contains the general requirements for bodies operating certification of persons. These phases help to ensure that examinations developed are reliable and valid. Validity is supported by ensuring that the measurement instruments, which are the evaluations and examinations, are directly related to the skills documented for a particular scheme. For examinations, this means that each item on the test must relate to a competency unit or a test blueprint, and it also must have support by reference or some other documented material. For many RAB QSA examinations, the blueprint of the exam is based on a specific ISO standard, and each item's supporting reference is a clause within that standard. Test reliability is supported by ensuring that the results of the examinations are consistent over time. Steps that ensure the results are consistent over time include conducting cut score studies, then equating newly created exam forms to that cut score. The typical phases to develop the examinations are shown here, and we will review each phase individually. A job or task analysis is the process of identifying the specific knowledge and skills required in order for one to be considered competent within an industry or field of study. Very often, this analysis is conducted by an established scheme committee as they develop a competency unit for a new scheme. During this process, the committee identifies any necessary standards, references, or other documentation which are used to determine specific competencies with required performance criteria that must be demonstrated in order to obtain certification. If there is not established reference material to create a competency unit, a job analysis study, which is very often a survey sent to individuals within that industry or field of study, may be conducted to determine the specific skills and knowledge required. It is most helpful to develop test specifications or blueprints from the results of this job analysis or competency unit development. When an examination is to be developed as part of the requirements for certification, it is important to identify which elements within a competency unit can be measured by such an examination. For example, the application of some auditing skills can only be measured through a skill examination. However, much of the knowledge of the process of auditing can be measured with a multiple choice type exam. A test blueprint or the specifications will identify which specific topics will be measured with the exam, as well as what proportion of that exam will test each topic. This last piece is important because some topics have a higher priority than others, which might result in more items being on the exam for some topics than for others. Once the test specifications have been established, item writing can begin. Subject matter experts like yourself are recruited to write items for the examinations. For newly established schemes, item writers would be individuals who meet the certification requirements and who may become certified in the future. For current examinations, item writers are recruited from currently certified subject matter experts. The item writing process is conducted remotely, which means that participants are asked to write test questions on their own time, but according to stated deadlines. The item writing process is a creative one, and one in which item writers may collaborate to produce items. Once a pool of items have been written, it is important to test these items with another group of subject matter experts before they are used in a formal examination. This process includes developing draft exam forms and having a group of subject matter experts respond to those items in an exam-like setting. The item reviewers use the response data, which is how many people chose each option in the test question, to provide revisions to the items to make them better before they are used in an actual exam form. Once the items have been reviewed, exam forms may be developed. For new examination programs, these exam forms must be piloted and reviewed before passing score can be determined. For current exam programs, the items have been field tested before they are placed into a formal examination, so a passing score can be determined based on the equating process. More information on equating will be provided in one of the next steps. A cut score study is required for any new scheme with an examination. A new exam form is developed based on the test specifications, and then a cut score committee helps to identify an appropriate standard of performance through the cut score study. The study itself is an established process meant to examine every item on an exam in relation to a performance standard, which is defined by the characteristics of those examinees in the population who have sufficient knowledge and skills within that industry or field of study to be considered certified. It is important that multiple exam forms be constructed for a scheme based on the test specifications. Once a standard of performance is identified through a cut score study for one exam form, then a process called equating can be used to identify a fair and comparable passing score for all other exam forms that are constructed for that program. The purpose of equating is to ensure that no matter if the examinee receives an easier or more difficult exam form than the original one from which the cut score was established, they will be measured against a common performance standard. The following example is another way to look at the exam development process and provides a visual of the process in terms of the final products, the exams themselves and their passing scores. All examinations are based on a set of test specifications or blueprints. For new schemes, an initial exam is developed, but it is important to develop multiple exam forms so that test security and the effects of practice are reduced over time. Multiple exam forms are best supported when there are many new test questions or items that are written and reviewed over time. RAB QSA will at times seek assistance in both item writing and review throughout each year in order to develop new exam forms as they are needed. To ensure that the passing score is consistent for all exam forms, a cut score study is conducted for the first exam form that is developed. Then the equating process is used to identify a comparable passing score for all other exam forms. All of these phases ensure that the examinations are valid and that reliable results are obtained from each of the exam forms. The phases occur in a cycle, and throughout the cycle, the psychometric properties of the items and the exams are reviewed to ensure that the results continue to be valid and reliable over time. Thank you for taking a moment to learn more about the RAB QSA International Exam Development Process.